What?
The curtain's about to go up.
Anybody have any questions? If you start, if anybody has a question. I hope everybody saw I answered a lot of questions today because I unfortunately drank some caffeinated tea at 8:30 at night. I couldn't sleep, so I had to go to bed. And I guess you sent them back, right? Or Yvonne did? So anybody have any more questions about all of this? Anybody? You can start. So today I wanted to show you a little bit of art. Because this you absolutely have to have. Did I mention this before? I said that Tara took a summary of what is Tantra. Did I mention that in the class? No? So somebody asked one of my teachers who passed away since then, what in a nutshell is Tantra? And of course the root meaning of the word is continuum. And based on that, he said the wisdom of emptiness or selflessness, or the scientific wisdom that seeks to discover the ultimate nature of reality, its job is to destroy the world that is made up of suffering, the samsaric world. So the idea is to destroy that world. And it successfully does, they claim. But once it's destroyed, then there's a need to choose. What is left is wisdom. And then out of wisdom, then another better world is to be made. And the art of making that world, that is a world of compassion and love, and a world that therefore makes it possible for others to free themselves from the world of suffering. And that art is Tantra. That's what Tantra means. So it means the continuum, in a way you could say the continuum of the relative self after it is free of the delusion of being an ultimate self. If you follow that. And then he said another really brilliant thing in another context that, again, I never saw anybody else say. And people ask, why is it then that when you realize emptiness, or what people think is the realization of emptiness, which seems to happen to them, and they tend to think it is, when they're analyzing things to find reality, like I taught you about looking for the nose, and how I challenge you couldn't find your nose. And when you do that thought experiment of trying to find your nose, and when your nose then dissolves under analysis, meaning that you see through the nose, it becomes transparent. You have an experience of what is called space-like equipoised samadhi. Samadhi meaning super concentration. And so in other words, you enter into a place like an infinite space state. And it doesn't mean you're there like in your little body like flapping around. You feel that you are the whole space. And you don't have, it's not like your body expands like that and becomes a space. You're in a very concentrated state of mind. And the whole world seems to dissolve, including the subjectivity, the equipment of you, your senses, your body and everything. And all the objects dissolve, and you have a feeling like you've discovered the reality of it all, and it is empty space. And then often too many people think that is emptiness. And that the dualistic idea that emptiness is some substratum or some space in which relativity occurs or something like that. Or the dualistic people who think that's nirvana, because when you reach that, there's a terrific feeling of release, they say. Moksha, the Hindus call it. And so they think that is emptiness. And So then the question is, well, if I'm a relative self and I come into this thing that feels like an absolute experience of the absolute as a vast space in which even then, like in the formless realm, then your consciousness seems to fill that space. And what would it mean when your consciousness fills in a vast, infinite space? It means that you're no longer perceiving things from a particular point, and then other things are objects for you in that point of subjectivity. Your awareness is everywhere, looking in every direction, something like that. There's no body, no eyes, so it's just present in every direction, and yet it has no object in a way. So how come what happened to the relative self is the question. So his statement in that was really cool. He says, well, the relative self has been imprisoned in the cage of the assumption of an absolute self for so long. Meaning, you never find your absolute self. Of course, by definition, a relative person can't find it. Although it doesn't do any good to just believe that, you have to try and fail, apparently, for it to become something that's viscerally transformative. But anyway, that is apparently the experience. But so it isn't that one is in a cage of an absolute self, because there is no such thing, but one feels one is. It's like you feel that the absolute self is just around the corner. It's like what you really are, and of course you don't experience that what you really are, so then you go and sign up on a weekend somewhere and go and say, find your true self. Or find your real identity. You have an identity crisis and then you find your real identity, so you think you can, because you think it's there. So because this cage of this assumed absolute self is there, when you seek the ultimate nature of the self, and you don't find anything, and you go into the space of equipoise samadhi, then that assumed absolute self seems to take the relative self with it. And so the relative self has a feeling of disappearing into an infinite space or something. That's the space like equipoise samadhi. And if one is not prepared that anything you experience, even if it seems to be the absolute to you, is a relative experience because you experienced it. And because you didn't experience it at a time before, and then you do experience it. So then that means it had a boundary, a temporal, spatial boundary, and then you experience it. So it's a relative thing, even though it seems like what you thought the absolute was. And after all, the naive person thinks that the floor is absolutely the floor. And therefore, atomic theories were like, people freaked out about atomic theories. And people today are freaking out about the fact that the quantum people, the physicists, haven't found any analysis-resistant object that is the Higgs boson. They shout, oh, we have mass. And, oh, but wait, oh yeah, well, yeah, we think we found it. Things exploded around, and that gives us the inference that there's something with mass there. But actually, it's all surrounded by dark matter, dark energy. We haven't seen that yet. But 97% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy, which we didn't see yet, but we think is there. Yes?
I have a question. How,
Oh,
well,
okay. That's good.
how does tantric
Muy
practice
bien. Sí.
Gracias. Interact with the neurobiological, to call it something, scheme of the drops and winds? Because the books sort of explain about the drops and the winds, and the red drop and the white drop and the indestructible drop. But it's not clear to me, at least, how does tantric practices intervene, and how does that kick off with the...
Okay, well let's hold that question. Let me just finish what I was saying, and I'll come back to that.
Yes.
And we will look at the schema of that, and then we'll discuss it at that moment.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say was that, therefore, the inferential understanding, this is the sort of main key point. The inferential understanding of what relativity is and what absoluteness is. So you kind of have that clear, which is like a common sense thing almost, although it's reasonable, and it's inference, but that's really critical. Because the royal reason of relativity then guards the person against the danger that when they have the space-like equipoise experience, which a yogi, a person looking for the nature of reality will have, if they really persist, and they develop the skills of concentration and so forth, And then they will see through everything, have an experience like that. The danger then would be the danger of thinking that is the absolute, and therefore the relative is all just complete illusion, is avoided by the fact that it's just the last type of illusion. Thinking that there's a real empty space, that's where everything seems to dissolve into. And that's me, that real empty space. And this, from the Buddhist point of view, is a danger, because what happens is one is reborn as a deity of the formless realm, or the immaterial realm, and spends a really long time there, and it's an ultimately disappointing thing. Actually, Thoreau, how many of you read Walden? Have you ever read Walden? Well, quite a few of you. Oh, not so many. Everybody should read Walden. Thoreau was really quite cool. At the end of Walden, he has a long passage about someone who was some kind of yogi in the Himalayas, whatever Thoreau thought that might be, in the 1830s, or whatever it was, and who wanted to give a walking stick to someone that he loved. And so he spent a long time finding just the right deodar tree, which is a type of pine that grows in the Himalayas. He never went to the Himalayas, he knew that fact. And then he found the perfect one, and then he started carving and carving. He became so absorbed in the carving of it that aeons passed. He's like taking this from some, a Hindu myth that he was reading. And then he carved and carved the perfect one, the long search for the right deodar tree. Then the long carving, aeons and aeons passed. And then finally he got the perfect walking stick. And then he was in a different universe when he came back out of the concentration of making the walking stick. And then he couldn't find the person he wanted to give it to, and he didn't know what was going on, he didn't know where he was, because he became so absorbed in that. So the Buddhist description of what they call the deities of the realm, the formless realm, or the immaterial realm, is that they kind of go into this state where there's, in a way, it's a state of almost like a nothingness state, but it's a space state. And there's even more subtle ones that are actually kind of like a nothingness state. And then one is neither nothingness nor somethingness, more subtle one. And it's just named like that. So you go into such a state, but then when you're in a state, has any of you ever been completely knocked out by anesthetic, like in a dentist chair or something, or an operation, sodium pentothal, something like that? I only happened to be once that I was completely anesthetized, that I remember. And I was so disappointed. It was a terrible disappointment. There you're lying in this chair, I know they've been doing this, and they're about to do some horrible thing, like pull a tooth or drill you or do something. And of course you're busy and worrying your way through life, anxiously worrying when you're awake through life, you know how it is. We all know that. Stress and whatever. And you're thinking, I'm going to be unconscious, really deeply unconscious. What a wonderful thing. What a way to relax there. And you're feeling like that. And then there's no sense of the passage of time. And then some nurse is saying, okay, get up. We need this chair, somebody else. It's an hour later or what, half an hour later, who knows, who remembers. And just like, there's the blood up there, and then that's how I feel, the blood. But I guess it was an extraction. And then you have to go sit somewhere, And then, then it starts to ache, your jaw, and then they give you like painkillers. But what's disappointing is, there's no sense of being out. Because there's no sense of time when there's no embodiment, no awareness of a heartbeat. You're just in a kind of trance. And one of you, I don't know which one, was debating the thing about former and future life, trying to say that, well, there is an experience of being unconscious. But we went back and forth. I don't know if they're satisfied with my counter argument that I was talking to them. I don't know if you other people fought. But actually, when you're really unconscious, you're not conscious of being unconscious. Although actually, if you're a yogi, a super meditator, there is apparently a state where you can be like in a state that, in the fourth formless or immaterial states is a state of infinite space, first one it's called, then state of infinite consciousness, then state of nothing whatsoever. And they don't say state, they say ayatana, which means like a medium, because they don't say realm. Because in a way it's not, when it's infinite space, it's not really a realm. It starts seeming a realm. But then infinite consciousness is not a realm, so they call it a medium. And then of nothing whatsoever. And then beyond that is a state of neither conscious or unconscious. So therefore, in a way, and these are considered progressive degrees of subtlety of a quietistic or quiescent state of like absolute immobility and peace. And that those are, and then they say that there are beings in those states who think they've reached nirvana, and they're in for a rude awakening when the nurse tells them to get the hell out of the chair, and they're back on the earth, you know, back on Times Square. Like, what am I going to do? Maybe they're only like a mouse creeping out of some like McDonald's kitchen in Times Square. Not even human, and they don't remember whatever happened. Yes.
Is that sort of like lucid dreaming?
I'm sorry.
Lucid dreaming.
I can hear you.
Lucid dreaming. You know, when you're asleep, but you're aware that you're asleep, and you can have some kind of control over your dream.
Well, that's, yeah, but there you're not in this, you're not having control of being unconscious in the deep sleep. But when you rise into the dream state, then you can control the dream state. Because then again, what happens is you're used to being a boundary being, a self in the body with senses, armed with senses, and trying to control an environment that is not you. And then when you go unconscious, of course, you release that when you fall asleep. You know, there is a sickness people have when they can't sleep. They're so nervous to let go of that sense of boundary. I think you die in 27 days or 17 days, there's something like that. I knew one very neurasthenic French artist, painter, who used to paint tiny little paintings, and he got in that state. And they had like ambulances there, and they were pounding on him and trying to knock him unconscious and get him to go to sleep because they were afraid he would die. He told me, I wasn't there when that happened, he just said that it happened to him. You know, it's actually dangerous to not sleep. And so, but being completely unconscious, and you're not aware that you're unconscious, isn't that the annoying thing? You fall asleep, you're really tired, you do have a job in the morning, you have to get up for a class. And then the alarm is ringing, and there's no sense of the time. It's like you just fell asleep, and then you're up again. It's really annoying. Of course, you would lie there 8 hours, or 6 hours, or 10 hours, whatever it was. But you don't have that sense of time. Because being unconscious means you're not conscious of being unconscious, unless you're specially trained. There's some special way, maybe you can. Supposedly, there's a state like that, fourth formless realm. Neither conscious nor unconscious. And the word they use for conscious is samya, which means conceptually conscious. That is aware of recognizing where you are. Recognizing, and so you're neither recognizing that you're conscious or recognizing that you're unconscious. Special type of cognition. Okay, so why did I mention that? I mentioned that in relation to the issue of continuum. So therefore, when you achieve such a thing, there's a process of oscillating between, because then you don't stay in such a state, and especially if you have the inference ahead of time, that any experience that you have will not be absolute because you're having it. And so then you have oscillation where you come back from that meditation where you saw through something, and eventually you see through the emptiness. Because you have a notion of emptiness would be an empty space. Like you have a notion, some people have a notion that nothingness is like a dark empty space. But they think that's what nothing, but that's not nothing, that's an empty space, it's not nothingness. And emptiness is not the empty space. Emptiness is this hard sound with the knuckle hitting the metal. That's what emptiness is. It's a different concept. Just like in the decimal system, which Indian people invented, and not the Arabs, but the Indians, and the word for zero was shunya, same shunyata word that in the Buddhist thing, it's emptiness. Shunyata, the ta is like T, like an abstract ending on a word. Shunya is an adjective, empty. And so that's the word for zero, and therefore zero is the place where quantity can be measured, and then adding zeros to a number that makes it bigger and bigger. So it's not. So it allows relativity to occur, something like that. So the royal reason of relativity is that anything that seems like an absolute to me is actually relative. And this is a saving, this is a medicine of not getting stuck in some sort of escapist state. Of course, according to the Buddha's insight, there is no such place where you can be permanently isolated from all reality. And who wants to be permanently isolated from reality? A person who can't take relationships. Psychotic, basically. They want to be complete. So in a way, a state of thinking that it is nirvana, that I'm gone and nobody's around and I'll never will be, and isn't that nice? That's like a psycho kind of attitude, kind of supreme, total isolation there. And that's what saved Buddha from Nietzsche. Because Nietzsche, his book, famous book, Thus Spake Zarathustra, you know, was original, he started writing it as Thus Spake Buddha. Because he studied Sanskrit, as well as Greek and Latin and all this. He was a classicist. And he liked the idea of Buddha, and the idea of sort of becoming an extraordinary type of awareness, and what, you know, Übermensch in that sense, not in some stupid Nazi sense. He was totally anti-Nazi sort of thing. But he liked that. But then he thought, well, but all he knew was dualistic or Theravada, individual vehicle Buddhism in his era. That's the only kind that they knew about in Europe. They didn't know about Mahayana or non-dualistic Buddhism. And so he thought, oh no, Nietzsche's too negative. I mean, the Buddha is too negative, so I don't want that fake Buddha. I want someone who finds something that redeems the relative world, and they can live blissfully. And then so he picks Zarathustra among the ICLH teachers, so Alzo's Prize Zarathustra, which is lucky because then he was falsely accused of being a Nazi, which he wasn't, by his sister. Anyway, never mind. So, back to Tantra. I want to show you a little art here. So, well, that's just in this particular thing I had, so I left it there. That's the teacher. And then this is the mandala of the Guhya Samaja that we're reading actually assigned next week. But I did start to talk about because of the connection of the imagery. And what this is a blueprint of a jeweled palace, and actually of a whole world. And this boundary is the boundary of this universe. And these flames are what they call Vajra, thunderbolt, supernova flames, world end flames. In the idea of like when the sun explodes and goes supernova, then when the star explodes, you have this level of intense flames. That's a symbol of. And then outside, these landscapes, there's 8 landscapes outside in the outer ring. And those are shmashanas, charnel grounds, cemeteries basically. But they don't really bury people in India. They leave the bodies there and then animals to consume them and so forth and so on. Here you see like a headless corpse wandering there, and they have specific, there's a tiger devouring a leg, in this charnel ground. And there are 8 charnel grounds, and that's like the samsara. Because samsara is like constant death. People keep dying and being reborn, dying and being reborn, so they put it out like that. But inside this alternative universe is this jeweled palace where beings are completely mutually inter-empathetic, and therefore there is no suffering, etc. The idea. It's an extraordinary Buddha-verse type thing, Buddha land, or as you could say, the kernel of a Buddha land. They don't bother with like cities and towns and continents and planets. But it is an alternative universe, the way that it's visualized and so forth. And so in the creation stage of Tantra, what those yogis who live in these, when they're living in India or someplace, or Tibet, they tend to live in charnel grounds or weird places, by the side of a river, where the fishermen got their fishes, like the Luyapa, who has to sit and eat fish guts for 12 years to get rid of his pride of a Brahmin. Because some lady, some courtesan, some madam told him he was still arrogant, so he wasn't enlightened yet, and he had to listen to that. It was said one of the stories, of Luyapa. And so these are the doors. These are the doors. This here that lies flat like that is actually the doorway, the archway, portico of where you enter the door. These are the 4 doors. And this is the wall, 5 jewel layered wall of the building, which goes like that. That's the portico, and the door is there. You go inside. And then inside there are 32, in this case there are 32 symbols. And the symbols represent 32 deities. And these are made with colored particles. And particles of pure pigment, with very, very fine powder, like a talcum powder. People say sand mandala, but it's not really as coarse as a grain of sand. It's more like a talcum powder that is complete. It's more or less completely powdered pigment, you could say. That's why the colors are very vivid. And this is the Eastern case. This is the Guhya Samaja Esoteric Community mandala. And this is what is used in initiation ceremony, where the person visualizes that their subtle body goes inside this thing and goes round and meets the different deities, and eventually is installed, Buddha deity, eventually is installed as the central Buddha deity in the ceremony, which is then opens the door for them eventually after 12 years of meditating or whatever, to finally accelerate their evolution toward becoming a perfect Buddha. Is ideal. So that's what it is. And it's quite a lovely thing. Tibetan exiles have gone around the world making these in libraries and as a demonstration, not in a ceremony. And people have been very popular, and lots of museums have had them shown and different things in art exhibits and things, because it's quite a vivid, extraordinary thing. And then this is another kind of mandala, and this is a symbol of the planet, you could say, or the universe. You know, they're not really making a difference in ancient time. And this one is filled with jewels, and then it's offered to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, like in that Shantideva thing, all the offerings. This is a symbol of giving away the world to enlightened beings. Like here, you worry about it. You're supposedly able to like make it into a Buddhaverse, so you worry about it. It's a giving away thing. And then these are offering cakes called bali, or dorma in Tibetan, very elaborate, and they make these like large kind of floats. They make them sometimes several stories high, like Rose Bowl parade floats type of thing, all out of barley flour and butter. And the ornaments around, the flower things that you see in the crescent moon shaped things that's all made of butter. This one particular one that's in Bodh Gaya, that's made in India by exile. Tibetan exiles during its set of ceremonies there. That's the great stupa of Bodh Gaya, and you can see how it's set up there. And this one is to one fierce type of deity. And it's a house like that made out of barley flour mixed with butter and sugar and molasses and things. And it's offered, it's like an offering cake kind of thing. They get very creative about that. And the Buddhists did that because, you know, in the shamanistic subcultures of India and Tibet and everywhere, people tended to offer animals in sacrifice. And of course, Buddhism didn't like that, so they made these kind of, but this is for the fierce one, they make them red in color like that. And then here's a whole larger display around the initiatory mandalas inside there, inside here. You know, the initiatory one is in there, as you see, in this little house. These are all kind of like arrangements around it, which are considered to be auspicious. And there's another one where you're seeing more of the house. And then now you can see the mandala through the house. And now we're looking from the northern door, the green colored one. The white is the east. And the front door is always the white. But there are 4 doors here. You could enter in 4 ways. And the yellow one is the southern, and the red one is the west. And each one of those is different Buddha family, and so on. And then this is the central deity of the Great Samadhi, which is 2 people actually, but two people as one person, male and female, in a seated union. And they each have 6 arms, 3 arms on each side, and 3 faces, and but only 2 legs, and which is just one form. It's called esoteric community deity, Great Samadhi. And then there are the 3 faces symbolize the 3 subtle levels of the subtle mind. You were asking a question about that, and we're going to get back to it in a schematic way. But that's what the 3 faces symbolize. So what that symbolizes is that when one becomes more developed about one's unconscious, one becomes able to be conscious in states where we normally are unconscious. And so here you have faces which represent your subtle mind. And they also represent those 3 stages of the subtle mind: the moonlit stage, the sunlit stage, and the darklit stage, which is this dark blue back thing of the front face. And then those also symbolize the right channel, left channel, and central channel of the central nervous system. Which channels of the nervous system is not hardware or wetware. In other words, you do find books, if you go to India at some yogi bookstore, you'll find a book of some doctor who's dissecting a dog looking for chakras. Where's the chakra? You know, this thing of these nerve complexes. But that's misguided because it's not wetware, it's software, it's programming of the patterning of the central nervous system, the whole system of chakras and central channels and things like that. It isn't actually wetware. For example, the central channel and the right and left channel are in front of the spine, the inside the skull, starting from here and going up down. I'll show you pictures in the front of the spine, and not like they aren't the central, in the center of the spine, where the nerve cord that's in the center of the spine, they're not that one. They're in front of it. So they're programming rather than a sort of bunch of, actually, hardware. Oh, that's a famous Buddha in Lhasa, reconstructed after being destroyed in '59, but then it was eventually reconstructed nowadays. Considered to be an actual picture of Buddha, a sculpture of Buddha by the Tibetans, but not likely by the art historians. This is a female yogini, one of the 84 Mahasiddhas, we're not sure which one. And sitting there, she has all her possessions are in that round bag there. And she's doing some yogic pose of some sort. Not sure quite what one. Holds a left hand, holds a skull bowl, which supposedly has the blood of demons in it, turned into nectar. And the right hand is just given, that's a gift-giving gesture, but usually there's a kind of flaying knife that these female deities hold, which is a sort of looks like a chopper knife with a vajra handle and then a hook on the end, used for skinning an animal. And then she uses that to chop up the demon brains in the bowl and create nectar out of it. Never mind, simple transmuting thing. So then this is a diagram of the central channel with the different chakras. You see there's a brain chakra, throat chakra, heart chakra, and then navel, and then genital chakra, or what they call secret chakra, and or private chakra. And then the central channel is that blue column going from top to bottom, with it sort of hooks over both at the top and at the bottom. And it hooks over and hooks under like that. And then the right and left channels are looped out like that, but usually they're presented as going right straight down next to the central channel. And what is not shown here is that there's a thought that at each chakra or nerve ganglion or central thing in the throat, the brain, the heart, the navel, the genital, the central channel is tied off by the right and left channels tying it out around it. So in the normal person, except at death, the central channel is not open to energy flow. It's shut down. And all the energies go in the right and left channels, the red and white channels. And actually they have a notion of birth, that at the center of the heart chakra, the consciousness of the previous, supercellular consciousness of the previous life of the person enters between red and white seeds of the parents, red from the mother, white from the father, in sort of a single cell or something, a combination cell, molecule, whatever, like that DNA thing. And then the blue thing is the consciousness of the being. And then they're kind of locked up there by this thing being by a quote, a sextuple knot, a six-fold knot, which the two triangle intersecting symbol is considered to be a symbol of, like Star of David, Seal of Solomon, and the Shiva Shakti thing in India, which are these two interlocking triangles. And that represents the six-fold knot at the heart center. And that consciousness is then trapped in the body. And then the way the fetus elaborates itself is the central channels start to elongate, and then eventually the head emerges, and then the limbs, and then the body develops out of that. But the first sort of cell of the embodied being, in the humanoid form anyway, and even in other kinds of animals, but more elaborate in the humanoid form, is that center of the heart chakra. And then death is defined as when that knot unravels violently in the normal death. I mean, in the sort of whoosh, it unravels. And then that central, super subtle continuum of consciousness, which at a subatomic level is not a stable thing. It's not a fixed, like a barcode, or a fixed little homunculus U. But it's a life process. It's a pattern thing at a super micro level. But then it splits from the central nervous system, and that's how death is defined as that. So death is defined as a departure of that central thing from the heart chakra. I mean, I'm just telling you. I'm not saying that's so. I don't even know, but who knows? But that's their story. Let's say That's what they claim to have discovered. Okay? And the way they claim to have discovered it, someone asked, another one of your good questions was, how come this is called science? What does that mean? Why should people believe this? Blah, blah, blah. Well, the reason it's called science in ancient India, Adhyatma, inner science, is that what they believe that the instrument, the microscope, you could say, the electron microscope of the yogi is the super stabilized awareness of a neural mechanism, which is the human being, which actually operates at a electron micro level. In other words, when your brain does something, like you look up and you see a picture, and your brain and you recognize it, there's all this subtle subatomic energies are zapping around in your brain, which are kept in a pattern by your concepts, and then you recognize it. But what's going on is actual, cellular, molecular, submolecular, subatomic processes, right? I mean, that's what's actually happening. So the preposterous, from a materialist point of view, claim of this scientific tradition is that by developing extreme ability, what we would consider extreme ability of concentration, you can become self-aware of your own, let's say, machine language. You become aware from a subtle point of awareness, rather than sort of coarse physical sense, controlled and shaped by concepts, so that you perceive things according to what you expect to perceive, what you have a notion of a perception. There's some really weird things that neuroscientists are discovering. The one really odd one I ran into in Scientific American or some journal is that in the ancient Greek literature, like the Iliad, there's no color blue. The sky isn't blue. The ocean isn't blue. It's red. They talk about the wine red sea and things like that. And so the blue enters into the European stream of culture like a little bit after the Roman Empire. I mean, we think, oh, that's a blue sky. I mean, everybody's been seeing a blue sky forever. Actually not. Not just people who are colorblind, but people who don't have a certain expectation of finding blue. A sort of brain design that interprets the light that comes from the sky or the ocean or from a painted wall as blue, that wasn't being discerned in that culture. They say. I mean, I was a little dubious. And I look back in Sanskrit, and what's happened there is that dark green and dark blue and even black are kind of mixed up together. So that the word shyama can either mean black or dark green or even dark blue, and in Sanskrit. So there was a mixture, but they had that. It was very close to black, actually. Blue was. If you look at ancient Sanskrit, like Shyama Tara, it's actually green Tara, but also Shyama can also mean black. Shyama is also the color of Krishna, who is a thundercloud color and considered blue. The later Hindu deity Krishna, is blue. He's a blue boy. I almost fainted when I was finally in the delivery room and our third child. When he came out, he was all blue. I didn't know that. So as I was fainting, the room started spinning, and I was like melting like that. And some clever nurse, well, that's what fathers do, Something the chair like this, whack the chair. But as I was going down, I was thinking, well, what will we tell the neighbors? Well, we'll say it's baby Krishna. Never mind. I resorted to Hinduism since I was collapsing. And anyway, that's a joke. Anyway, the thundercloud is a wonderful symbol in India, a monsoon culture, oriented culture, where the dark thundercloud brings the rain, from the dried out springtime, early springtime. And so then the deity Krishna, who's like God to people who are devoted to that, then they associate his body color as that, because that's considered an auspicious color. But it's sort of blackish blue, it's very, very dark. So that's a weird thing that neuroscientists are coming up with, that kind of thing, and then looking in literature, and they're finding things like that, which I think is which is all revelatory to us. Apparently you can go to the psych department, any of you who are wondering about what I'm talking about, and apparently there's a kind of lens that they can put on you like a pair of glasses. And when you first put it on, you see the room upside down. And I've heard that, I just didn't go myself yet, but I've been meaning to for 30 years, but I didn't get there yet. Too busy. But apparently the rooms, like this room would look upside down. And your brain will flip it over in less than a minute. which is then, so you realize how constructed what you think of as what's out there, you know. You're constructing it all the time. That's why you're tired after 12 hours. You want to sleep. It's terrible to be building the world all the time. Okay? But anyway, their preposterous claim, therefore, is that the yogini, who develops extreme self-awareness and self-concentration, goes back to where they are perceiving, not just from the ordinary senses and through ordinary concepts, but can perceive super subtle level processes in their own being. And therefore they get down to where, you know, Buddha, the yogi, says that there are no indivisible particles. The Buddhist yogi said, there's no indivisible particle, there's no atom, true atom, because and then they said, well, how can you say that? What do you mean that everything dissolves under analysis? And they say, well, what's your evidence? And they say, well, because I saw it dissolve. They say, and I saw it with the atoms of my whatever inner instruments, and I saw that they all dissolved into space. It dissolved under analysis. You keep taking them apart, they're gone. And then that is not that. I didn't feel that was destructive. The reason that the Higgs boson thing is such a huge deal, and they build billions and billion-dollar electron accelerators and things, multi-billion-dollar ones, is that of course everybody's looking for the indivisible particle that will make them feel secure in the world. Because somehow people don't want to surf through life, right? They don't want to deal with the instability of even matter. It's matter, it's really matter, it matters to me, I got to matter, you know. That's what they want. It's childish, actually, but it's human. That's the way it is, okay? And always people who pretend to tell them that they know what it is, they always tell them they know about the origin of everything. Big Bang, oh yeah, we got that. Now we got it under control. Big Bang. With the authority. Okay, this is another kind of chakra. So these are from Tibetan medicine, which have to do with, like acupuncture type thing, the meridians, the energy flow, even in the ordinary unenlightened body, but they're the same as the yogic chakra, so I wanted to show that. And this is a subjective thing of someone meditating. They're not showing the full length of the chakra. It's a modern artist's representation. But this is how the central thing goes when one reprograms, software-wise, the central nervous system around such an axis. And she's meditating that, but she's not completing it down at the bottom, but because they didn't want to show that, they're just showing the upper part, which they often just do. And then this comes to the schema, and this is about your question, right? Right? You're asking about this, so now we'll discuss this on this basis. Now I'm going to answer your question. So then the tantric science is this, they then reanalyze the human body-mind complex. And they have this coarse body-mind, and here the coarse body is the flesh and blood body. Or sometimes they say the sixth sense body, because in a way the body is just one big bunch of sense organs, is what they want to say. Like the skin is the tactile sense organ, and then the rest of them are concentrated in the face, right? The nostrils, the eyes, the ears, and the nose, right? So the five sense objects. And so sometimes they call it flesh and blood and bone. Sometimes they call it the six senses. That's the coarse body. And then the sense cognition or sense consciousness is the sixth sense consciousnesses, because they have one called the mental sense consciousness, which is sort of internal and which goes around. It's how they explain the fact that sometimes when you're really absorbed in listening to a symphony or something, you won't see something in front of you. Someone will come and try to distract you. It's dinner time, and you're listening to your rock and roll, and you don't see them for a minute because you don't pay attention to your visual field. Or sometimes you're very absorbed in watching something, you don't hear something, because that means that there's a mental sense that aligns itself with the different sense consciousnesses, or can reproduce, while even awake, a memory of a sense experience, like how I saw the Empire State Building 3 hours ago when I was Midtown, or whatever, and you have an inner vision of that, So the mental sense is very powerful and creates this inner world, and that's the one that rises after death, rises in the dream state after sleep, the mental sense consciousness. So it's the sixth sense consciousness, okay. Then the subtle body mind is where the human being is actually self-aware as a central nervous system, but not only central and peripheral nervous system, They have a symbolic number, 72,000 nerve channels. They all branch out of the 5 or 6 chakras, and it's not one system. There are some with 7 chakras, 5 chakras, 4 chakras. It's because it's software. It's for specific internal experiences that they program the central nervous system like that. But the neural channels, energies, which they call wind, but that just means, wind only means motion, which actually I think is what energy means, movement. They don't have, they are sort of on the boundary between something having mass and something just being motion. And then neurotransmitters. And actually in Buddhist medicine, which affected Chinese medicine and Indian medicine, this concept of vayu, prana, qi in Chinese, ki in Japanese, is the big boundary, it's the bridge between mind and body. It's a very important concept in those medicines. It's sort of between psychological disorder and psychosomatic, the wind energy, the qi energy, and those guys, the martial arts guys, like, blah, and they break a brake or something, they punch through concrete, and some of them do some really weird things. They really do. We had Master Zhou Yitian, famous Qigong master, who I hope he's still alive. I haven't seen him in 10 years more, who used to have an office in Los Angeles, and he was a healer, and he made a living. He was a Qigong master, but he defected at some point from China, and he then made a living in LA by healing and doing heat energy sort of acupuncture. And he worked on me and people I observed, other people, my children, and he would hold his hand like this over your hand, about that far away, and it would get so hot you had to say hot, 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 and he would stop. So he would apply heat very precisely like this. That should be impossible. Absolutely. He would go like that. And there's no fakery. It couldn't possibly be any fakery. He would go like this. And then when he was doing my daughter, she was just experimenting. She wasn't feeling ill or anything. He was doing her. And then there was a lot of people from his office because, she's a little bit of a celebrity at the time. And then he kind of got distracted. And she was going, hot, hot, hot. He had a blister. He had a small blister because he was a little careless, And then he apologized profusely. So he definitely did that. And then we had him at a conference that we had with a bunch of at-risk youth in the West Coast cities, mostly some even from Minneapolis, reform school types, who'd been in some ghetto and had a horrible time, and then but who didn't get educated properly, and then ended up in some sort of school. And then we got them 500-600 of them. So we wanted to show that the non-violent kind of Qigong thing is more powerful than the gun or the gang or a lot of we were working with police groups who are cutting people out of gangs, things like that. This guy did some really weird things. The one thing was he picked up a 40-kilo weight with his scrotum. Without major misery, apparently, very easily, to show something. And then also he stood on a piece of paper, on a hoop, that was just folded over the hoop without anything, and it was paper. And then people filled buckets of water that he was holding up to, and he himself weighed 130, maybe 150, 40 pounds. Then the things themselves, each weight was up over 200 pounds. Paper didn't break. Then he had 2 pickup trucks with a wire cable around his neck in low gear, driving away. And it was like that, and it didn't break his neck or hurt him or anything. He was standing there, and the 2 trucks going, so their wheels were spinning. I mean, they didn't go. They weren't tow trucks, but they were pickup trucks. And he was showing these kind of things to these kids, who were used to thinking of somebody with a gun as being powerful. And he was showing there's some sort of mind power that is there, and in the Qigong, the tradition, Tai Chi Chuan, Qigong, that kind of thing. Anyway, that's a wind. That's control of Qi. Is what that is. What they call control of Qi, and it's energies. And we all have the same Qi, and it's very powerful. In some of the paintings of the people who have certain types of disorders, especially Qi disorders, they have people, all the skeletons all bent over or chicken breasted, and all the spine gets bent like this and that just from this Qi. So it moves bones actually, in bad ways actually, when it's not harmonized. The neurotransmitters are Bindu, that means drops literally, and those are like hormones or something like that, some kind of subtle neurotransmitters, basically. So that's the subtle body. It channels Zalung Tigle in Tibetan, or Nadi Vayu Bindu in Sanskrit. And then the subtle mind are these three states: luminance, radiance, and immanence, which other people call them other less interesting words. I call them luminance, radiance, and immanence. And if you became self-aware in the way that they train themselves to become, apparently, as you fall asleep, when you lose consciousness in sleep, you could become aware of a threshold where, as you're letting go of occupying, in a way, your sense organs, which you have to do when you fall asleep, right? You do let go of any visual field, audio field. If you're in a noisy room with some roommates, you have to put maybe earplugs and a blindfold. But anyway, you let go of that, and then you even skin. Of course, you're on a soft sheet and a nice pillow, and you're tired, but you let go of a sense of boundaryness between yourself and your environment, which is a little. And you think you're safe in a room, and you're going to wake up, so you don't mind it. But you do that, and that process of letting go, they describe that as you withdraw. These energies withdraw into the central nervous system. And like, for example, in a dream state, they focus on the throat chakra. In a deep sleep state, they focus on the heart chakra and the genital chakra. In the waking state, they focus on the crown chakra or the navel chakra. They have like things that they say, I don't know why. They claim to have reported that from becoming self-aware of the inner processes, actually. But basically, when you go out of the coarse body and you let go of that, then before you go completely unconscious, that's in the immanence state. The immanent state, the state of what you feel is unconscious, is where you're about to reach into clear light of the void. You reach into your cells, somehow allow themselves to bathe in this plane of infinite energy, which is what they call clear light of the void, clear light of emptiness, which if you were self-aware of that, you would be a Buddha. To actually be aware of that, you'd be a Buddha. So we're not aware of that, those of us who are not Buddhas, and we're just in a dark state of unconsciousness. And that one is like beyond that unconsciousness, and it's called clear light, but it isn't a bright light. It is a twilight light. It's a light which is not the opposite of the dark. So there's no light-dark duality in this supposed clear light. It's indescribable or something, they say. But it's actually it's reality. And actually, we always teach. We have a spaha, and we have a Tibet house does, and we have a sleep yoga. And the sleep yoga is mentally tell yourself, when I sleep, I'm not lying in the dark state of nothingness, even though I go unconscious in the darkness. But my body is not lying in dark nothingness. When my mind gets out of the way, my body is immersed in a bath of the infinite energy of the void, of this twilight transparency, like diamond glass-like place, where every cell that needs energy and replenishment can draw endlessly without depleting this infinite source of energy. And people wake up pretty teary when they do that. And the argument is, if you're lying in nothingness, why do you feel better when you wake up? Where do you get restored? What restores you? The dark nothingness is going to give you energy. It's like you're at a pump that's not working. You can't be refueled from that. How come you feel refueled in the morning? And that's the argument. But people can't just see it like that. You have to be Buddha to find this, to be conscious about that. You have to be Buddha. But anyway, these three states, and the luminance one is where you go into the empty space that you reach as you release the five sense organs, becomes filled with a white light like a moonlight. So you have a moonlit empty space with a white light, but a luminescent type of light, like a moonlight, but like a neon white. And then it becomes radiance, where it gets more reddish orange. They say red, but actually sunlight is orange, isn't it? We depict it as orange, rather than a mixture of red and yellow. But they say red, which may be a neural thing, who knows? But anyway, the radiance one is where it's red, more energized, and actually bright. And then it goes into darkness to get away from the intensity of the brightness, actually. So then it's still in a sort of subtle dualistic level. And these are we'll call the three intuitions. And then those three intuitions. Okay, then the super subtle body mind is this one. And actually at this level, and you materialists don't get triumphalist. No, you scientific materialists, don't be triumphalist here. At this level, they talk about body-mind, duality, but actually they acknowledge that there's no difference between matter and mind at this super subtle level. So that therefore, materialistic, in Buddhist science, materialistic reductionism could have certain uses and does, actually in biology, herbal medicine, and things like that. And they like the progress made by the physicists, actually. And in Western science, it fits with Buddhist science, no problem. So materialistic reductionism is okay for certain applications. You know, it's not that it's the truth, because there is no fixed, structured truth. Conventional and relative reality is not absolute truth, any way you talk about it. So you can do materialistic reductionism, but you can also do mentalistic reductionism, or idealistic reductionism, where mind is the power, is the energy power. So you can, and that has uses in certain contexts. So either way, you know, there's no, in other words, all theories about relativity, which is the only reality that there is, are only relative. And they are awaiting disproof by, in other applications in context, by more experience. Which is what Karl Popper says the material scientists are supposed to be doing. But are they? No, they have their materialistic dogma. Because they were getting away from the church and being sent to hell. You know, if they didn't pay their dues to this and that pope or whatever, or sing in the choir or do whatever. So they want to escape or being burned at the stake or silenced like Galileo. They rightly want to get away, so I applaud their nihilist materialism for that. But then when it becomes a dogma and they persecute people who are looking at something more subtle, then they're being silly. Okay? So super subtle physical energies, which is super subtle wind, which is clear light of the void. And then the mind is the clear light, bliss void mind. In a way, I'm mixing, I didn't put this very properly in this, because the bliss mind is the one that is the mind, actually. It's pure bliss. Because this is only known by bliss, which means in a way that it's not known in any dualistic way. The bliss is the bliss of dissolving into this, letting go of one's differentiated self into this completely. And what it discovers is the clear, infinite, clear light of the void. So that in a way the body is the clear light energy. So clear light is kept up with body. But in a way it doesn't matter because it's all one thing at that super subtle level. And one is conscious at that level, then one is the Buddha. And being conscious at that level, although it seems like you're withdrawing from engagement and the sense instruments and the body and the environment, it seems like that. But actually from that subtle level, since all of that other relational level is made of that awareness and that energy, then you're sort of everywhere simultaneously. You think you're withdrawn, and then when you're consciously at your super subtle mind, then that's a Buddha mind, and you're everywhere. So therefore, which is contradictory, so you can't even say that as a dogma. So it's indescribable, you can say it's indescribable. Then people like Kirti didn't say anything, right? Supposedly. But he didn't say anything within the awareness of that. And then within one person having the awareness of that creates a field where the other people felt really cool. Unlike Shariputra, who had a kind of dissolving experience, definitely, which he considered nirvana. He was stuck in a duality of that, Shariputra. So when he was silent talking to the goddess, he was thinking about that place that was a different place that other people hadn't been to, and he was feeling, well, I can't say anything because they won't get it, because they didn't go there. I went there and I'm better than them. So then she said, oh, don't point to nirvana by abandoning speech. Nirvana is not any place. It's not outside, not inside, or anywhere in between. And your language is not outside, inside, or in between too. So don't point to it by abandoning speech. So his silence was no good because it was withholding something. Whereas Vimalakirti's silence was good because he went into a sort of mode where he experienced from within that field. Everyone is already knowing it themselves. You know, if you are one with the clear light of the void, why does someone need to tell you that? In other words. Never mind that one. I'm not bad one. It's okay. So then this is called the mind continuum, the Chitta Santana or the indestructible drop, the Akshara Bindu, or even the Buddha nature of Buddha womb, the Tathagata Garbha, right? So that's that schema. Now, I don't know if that's still coming to your question, but now this is interesting. The unenlightened person, who has not yet got to that clear light awareness, that level of subtlety, when they are in the luminous radiance and immanence of the subtle mind, when they're withdrawn from their sense organs, from the 72,000 peripheral nervous system into the central nervous system of the 3 channels, but they're not even really in the central channel, they're mainly in the right and left channel, then these 3 lights, the moonlit, sunlit, darklit, the dark light, the sunlight, the moonlight, they are roiled by these instinct patterns, instinctual patterns. And the instinctual patterns are like, and actually I made a mistake here. I can't write on it when it's in that mode. Really, the emphasis in the first one is almost more aggression. I should have put lust emphasis in the second one and aggression emphasis in the first one. You know, desire and hate, right? The two main secondary but main addictions, based on the ignorance addiction, which is the root one, right? So I put lust there and aggression there, which was sloppy me. It's actually opposite. There are some lust-oriented things in the 33 instinctual patterns, and it's a weird list. That 80, the 80 list of 80. It's kind of weird because it has things like biting, sucking, kissing, scratching, you know, recoiling, shrinking, and then it has mental things like hating, loving, envying, whatever, you know. So it has a mixture of mental and sort of physical. So they're kind of like seed patterns, like surges, I think, where the moonlit space is roiled by. You don't notice the moonlit space because you're identifying, the light person is identifying with a feeling of hostility about something, but it's the one it's disconnected from some object to be hostile toward. If it's a sucking thing in the lust sign, it's disconnected from anything you would suck on. It's just a surge, the basic surges that are the instinct of the being that is used to being separate from reality and finding ways to interact with it in a painless way, you know, in a dominating or painless or controlled or protected way, you know, whichever, you know, and they're kind of primal surges, you can say. And conquering those primal surges involves developing a subtle mind that can be lucidly dream, can be in a lucid dream-like between state, what they call the magic body state, in meditational dream, or after death, you know, supposedly all fitting those things together. And then the third one, immanence, has only 7 instinctual patterns, which are depression, drowsiness, sleepy, wanting to avoid awareness, you know, all those kind of things, sort of, because going into the darkness, you know. Any sort of that. Okay, is that helpful?
Yeah.
And I think your question was in that area. By now, I've totally forgotten.
No, my question,
It's in
my
that
question was how to
Right. So now
tantra.
here from the Book of the Dead, you have this 8. You see the 8 dissolution processes, and they of course say that different people who die will not necessarily follow this exact pattern. And they have other tantras and other things where, for example, the smokiness is first, and then the mirage hallucination one is second, etc. They're different things. Some of them don't have the fireflies thing; they have sparks, you know, relating to the smokiness, like showers of sparks, you know, like sparklers. And they describe them, you know, the dissolution of earth to water, and as earth to water goes, your sight sense loses connection to your visual concepts. So, you know, why people hallucinate under the influence of alcohol or some drugs or etc., or in some states of concussion or something, is that something is paralyzed in their mind where the concept for doorway immediately goes. So when I look up, I don't see anything that I have to then look around in my trove of concepts for my door concept. The door is right there in the minute I look at it. But there is a gap actually, but I just don't perceive the gap. So I think the door concept is in the door. The naive person thinks it really is the door. It radiates its doorness out to me, in other words. In sort of old-fashioned metaphysics, they have that. But in Buddhist epistemology, you see something that you don't recognize immediately, but then almost immediately your door concept arises. And they make that, like, for example, the wall is what is that wall? Is that gray, light gray? I don't know, or white? I don't know what it is, light gray, I think, right? The wall. So they say that when you look at the wall, you see light gray. And then in a split second, you see, quote, light gray. In other words, you recognize it to fit with your idea of what color it is, with your concept, your expectation of seeing light gray. And then there's a lot of argument in Indian epistemological circles with other non-Buddhist Indian philosophers and scientists and psychologists, where they argue against the fact that there is a kind of primal awareness that is independent of the concepts, where you kind of, like when you first look at something, you kind of are there where you looked. It's like when you first look at sky, you were just out in the sky. And then it's you see blue sky or cloudy sky, and then you quote, you cover it with your concept. But there's a split second where you sort of, there's not even a sense of subject-object duality in this area. And when we live in that state, because our concepts are instantly covering things so we can feel in control and we know where we are and who we are, what we are, etc. But which also makes us bored with things, because of course we only can experience what we expect to experience. And then we read some poetry and then we see a new dimension because they give us a new concept. Right? So anyway, this is the thing. Earth to water, mirage. Water to fire, smokiness. Fire to wind, fireflies swirling in the sky, swarming in the sky. It would be better. Wind to consciousness, space, a still candle flame. And that's when we leave inhabiting, in a way, our coarse embodiment. And then we enter our coarse mind, which is going around organizing our coarse sense impressions. And then we come down into this state where we're in the unconscious, in a way. It's our subconscious, but it's also unconscious. And our mind is moonlit sky, sunlit sky, pitch darkness. But then those have 33, 40, and 7 different surges in them that don't make them into pure open sky for us normally, but we're sort of in a restless kind of feeling. And because we're kind of down in the unconscious, and if we're not trained, if we haven't confronted it, then it disturbs us. And then finally, the Buddha experience, where we reach transparency or clear light, and etc. And then so that's a useful schema. I think you have that in the Book of the Dead thing. What? Okay. Then this one, it connects those different sensations, those different dissolutions, to the different senses and the different aggregates, matter. And it relates to the mirror wisdom. The eye sense goes, so that's why you hallucinate, because the eye sense is no longer well organized by the conceptual bank used by the eye consciousness, visual consciousness. And then sights, sights are gone. And then the sound goes next. And then smell goes next. And then tactile and taste go together in the fourth one. And then you go to the subtle mind. So that unpacks the top part of those 8 stages. As a schema, Oh, I don't know what that. Oh, that's the central channel. There's one Australian artist who makes these impressionistic things about it. It's kind of cute, that one, because it has the lower hook on it, from the perineum to the tip of the sensitive genital. It's at the bottom, and at the top is from the crown of the head of the brain down to the third eye, to the forehead. That's the central channel. It looks like nothing, you can't see it well. This is a Tibetan schema of that, and that blue thing on the left is the central channel. The right and left ones are wrapped around it in a knot. At the center, notice there's a triple wrapping in red and a triple white wrapping, and that's that 6-fold knot that holds the soul consciousness. You can use the word soul, definitely, meaning if you mean by it the subtle, super subtle continuum of energy. And then these are kind of anatomical descriptions of the different chakras. And the heart chakra is this one on the lower right corner, because there's only 8 petals in that chakra, which is, the chakra means wheel, and sometimes they call it lotuses, And the throat chakra has 16 petals, crown chakra 32 in this system. But there are other systems where there's different numbers of the different chakras, because that's, as I'm saying, it's software, not hardware. The navel chakra has 64. It's a lot of energy in the navel chakra. It's very important to our waking, and actually it's very key in martial arts. The expert martial artists who really can manage the chi, their consciousness operates their, they center themselves, not so much they're a little bit in the forehead and in the eyes, and they're not present in their sense organs in their head, but their main movement, their body movements, like the punches, the kicks, the evasion, things are channeled straight out of the navel chakra. So the hara, what they call it. It's not exactly where the belly button is. It's 4 finger widths below the belly button at this place. And also that's where there's this huge heat can be generated, where those yogis who melt icebergs. There was one Danish guy, I didn't meet him and I didn't see it, but down at the Rubin Museum, there was a Danish, I think he was Danish, who had a particular thing. He wasn't necessarily a wild yogi of anybody, he was a little bit of a yogi, because he could be dumped into a large tub filled with ice water, and stay there for hours and melt all the ice. And he did it in the street in front of the Rubin Museum. And he sent an email like, please come, I want to meet you, because he knew about me or something. But some reason I was out of town or I couldn't go, but my son went over there. He said he really did it. The water was like steaming after a while. He stayed in there. Normally you faint, pass out, turn blue. And so he could do that inner heat thing. But I think he didn't put it together with the overall Dharma thing necessarily. I guess that's why I wanted to talk to him, because I could help him, which I probably couldn't have. But anyway, then these are some of the seed syllables, and this is this Australian guy makes these great impressionistic things that I think are kind of fun. That's inside the central channel, those discs and those letters, upside down letters on the disc. And that's the navel chakra where that little flame is there, which that little flame is the most simplified version of the syllable the syllable is the primal creation symbol. That's the Big Bang. It isn't a bang, it's a Even in Hindu, Vedic Sanskrit things. And that is the shortest Prajnaparamita Sutra. Did I tell you that? I did.
Yes,
I mentioned it.
yes,
Oh, good. Yeah. So that's down there, that little flame thing, it's and it looks like a flame, but it's actually Then this is that's the navel chakra. From a subjective kind of point of view, from being within it, the mind being boiled, that he thinks he's a very good artist. That's the heart knot of the triple knot, you see. In the center of the chakra, then, is where the soul continuum energy is kept. Super subtle one, supposedly. And then these are how you might feel if you were conscious in your own central channel. And that's another one at the base level. The right and left one, the way they feed into the central one. Okay, so then these are, now I'm showing, that's the Kala Chakra Buddha, I think. And that's time machine or time wheel Buddha, male, female, and all covered with, demurely covered in different scarves and robes and things. And but the key point that I wanted to make in showing this, so there's a picture of Kala Chakra in the male, female in the center, the one being both male and female, and then with eight Shaktis, which represent the winds, the energies of the solar body. But here they're seen as deities in a mandala on petals of an 8-petal lotus, in the heart of that giant mandala, which has 3 buildings and 722 different forms. And the reason for meditating oneself in one of these weird things in the creation stage, which you're reading, is that you then develop a stability around that. Because you understand about emptiness, but the deeper your understanding of emptiness goes, the more self-aware you become about how you are building your world of images and perceptions yourself. They are not just out there. You're making them. And partially, other beings are also making it. So you're intersubjectively aligned with other beings. But minds are engaged and are responsible for how they perceive the world. And you are responsible. And therefore you can reshape the world by seeing it in a different way. And of course you take that out of the level of just reshaping a room and being more friendly in a room and not getting caught up in bad vibes or something, which is a technique you can use to maintain your good cheer in the midst of stress. But this goes to where you change the whole world, like you create an alternative world, which is the world of the mandala. And in the mandala, the reason that you then would inhabit in some case, sometimes you're just a regular being with one face, 2 arms, either male or female. Sometimes male will visualize themselves as a female. Female will visualize themselves as a male. That's all right. And they get to where they interfere with what you have in the brain, which is a model of your regular body. Like right now, you all are sitting there listening and looking, and you have got an image in your mind, and then you move your arm or something. But you do move your arm because you have a model of yourself in your brain, which you don't have to pay attention to. It's subliminal, and some impulse, some energy impulse goes like that, and then it transmits the signal, and then you move your arm. And your arm moves, but you just feel you're just moving your arm. But actually the brain operates to a certain model, which we know from evidence by people under hypnosis, by phantom limb phenomena and things like that. So you're interfering with that, and you're creating through systematic stabilized meditation a different model of your being. Like this Kala Chakra has 3 shoulders. Out of each shoulder come 2 upper arms and 4 forearms. So a total of 12 arms on each side, for example. Now, if you stop to think, and you're remodeling your feeling of your, I can't see my shoulders now, and I have a model that there's like sore muscle here, and like one arm bone comes out somehow held together by ligaments and muscles. I have a model like that, right? And then I move my arm. So then you shift that model in meditation where you have 3 shoulders, 6 upper arms, 12 forearms, and hands, and which is a really complicated thing to do. In the doing of that, you are changing the way your brain is structured, the software of the brain. And you're doing it because it's all emptiness, and you're more responsible and aware on a subtle level of your ability to structure your experience. And you are structuring it another way, which is then opening your inner sensibility and changing the way you're wired, in a way. You're messing with your wiring, which is why it's illegal to do it. It's esoteric and illegal to try that sort of thing without having some depth of awareness of emptiness, of the infinite relativity, and hence the total mutability of everything, which, far from being a nihilistic thing where you can just escape from it all into some empty space, means you are responsible for creating your contribution to the creation of the world that you live in. So you're trying to improve how your creative part fits in with it, if you follow. It isn't you can't totally change it by changing your mind, but interacting with others, you can make your contribution, or you can make your negative contribution as well. So that's what emptiness teaches us, is the importance of our tiniest action. Remember my Shantideva favorite thing? Someone asks you, where's the bathroom? Oh, it's over there. Point with your finger. Or, it's over there. That's a tiny little thing, but whole body language message is changed by doing that. That makes a difference, somehow, in your subliminal relation with other people. Okay, I think I'm running out of time. I have a lot more to do. That's a great Samaja again. I can show more of this next week. You're reading the sign was the sadhana, the evocation of visualization script, you could say, was there. And these are all the different deities that we do in Samaja Mandala. And you're all of them at once. And these are the fierce ones. But I'll show them. This I call, this is so good. Like, this is Ms. Buddha. This is the Vajra Yogini. And then I call her Ms. Buddha.
Is it Vajra?
Doesn't need a male.
Is it Vajra Varani?
What?
Is it Vajra Varani? The name of the Yogini?
Vajra Yogini.
Oh, that's Vajra Yogini?
Yeah. Or sometimes it's called this particular form of the Vajra Yogini. Sometimes it's called the Nara Dakini.
Okay.
Because Naropa, it's a vision of Naropa, of the female. Prajnaprana, the same as Prajnaprana, but in the form of a yogi.
So Vajra Varani is a
Varahi is another form where Varahi would have a human face, but she has a big sour head coming out of her neck. It doesn't go on the main face of the sour. But there are many different forms. There's endless. Like there's endless. Okay? So this is the Albert Thomas of the inner science. Guess what? Sorry? So the blue color is associated with hatred converted into ultimate reality, perfection, nature. Hatred is associated with analysis and intelligence. It's hatred or to destroy them. So taking them apart for analysis. It was associated with intelligence. So it's the intelligence of discovering that the universe is perfect. So that's a healing, and that's the source of the healing. That's like blue. Then it comes to aware of people suffering, don't you think? What?
The blue is symbolizes wisdom.
Yeah, well, it's that particular wisdom. There's 5 wisdom. Once you're building the world, you get out of wisdom. There's 5 wisdom. It's called the ultimate reality, purity, wisdom, or perfection. Ultimate reality, perfection. Okay. That's okay.
Oh, you got a question here.
What? Yes. Right.
Basically, at the very end, you were saying the reason that there are those visualizations of many different
Yeah. Well, there you're developing, the basic idea is, even if it isn't anything, like if you're visualizing yourself like that as a female, you're a male, conventionally speaking, but that's a visualizing as a female. And the point of that is that you're developing an ability to alter the model of yourself in your subjectivity, and then the ability to stabilize that in the long-term meditation, and really vividly experiencing yourself that way, is that then when you go into these subtle states, like the magic body state and the perfection stage of the Unexcelled Yoga Tantra, or your dream states where your whole body is just really a mental image, you can stabilize that image and be that being. You know, and then you have fierce forms that you can be when you go into your unconscious and deal with more aggressive elements. And more erotic forms when you go in and deal with, if you remember Freud in the unconscious, he says eros and thanatos. So the erotic and the aggressive, right? So that you adopt such a body to deal in the kind of sphere. And it feels safe, to be able to deal with it.
And then one other thing that was just
But then the main object specifically is to have an image of your body as like a weird shoulder joint like that, or a head that has many heads. Then you're changing the neural patterning in your brain when you do that. And you could go nuts about it. You could go nuts about it too. This is an esoteric. These are esoteric things. But the Dalai Lama authorized people in his circle to talk about it and let people know what it is, because the popular idea, unfortunately, is that Tantra means just have a lot of sex, or be violent and do weird things. Go around like Halloween all the time, and that's really wrong. So that's why he told us we should tell people what it is. That doesn't mean they can do it. In fact, the warnings of the dangers of messing with your own nervous system are like that. Okay? Thank you. Okay, take it easy. All right.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes? I have to keep this mic. Yes, what's the question?
So yoga tantra, dream yoga. Sorry.
Yes.
Is that just a practice for the?
Yeah, that's one of the 6 yogas of Narabha, it's called.
Can you experience the rainbow body through dream yoga?
You could experience some simulation of rainbow body through dream yoga. It would be in a subtle plane at first, but it would be a way of thinking what that might be like, of simulating that experience. There's all kinds of these approach states, simulation states. Then there's real thing where, by being aware of yourself from the cellular level, then that's the real rainbow. When you simulate that, and that warms you up toward it, in other words, is the idea. And it's like, there's that one high jumper, maybe too young. I don't know how many Olympics you've watched. But there's that one red-headed, quite tall high jumper who was very successful, American, won some gold medals for America. And when he would get to where he was doing the high jump, he would stand for a few seconds, and he would go like that with his head. So when I was sure, I think I never met him, I didn't ask him, but I'm pretty sure that I never read a record where he said what he's doing. But of course, you can see by the head gesture, he is visualizing himself making the steps that are required, the running steps that are required, and then the leap of getting over the bar without knocking it down. He's visualizing himself successfully doing that. And then he's going to put all his muscles and his nerves and his whatever to do it. So he's building like a pattern, a template for him to make a successful jump. And it's sort of like that. He's just doing that innately. I'm sure he didn't read about Tantra. He's just doing it because he finds it works. It's that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yes.
Can you not film me?
Okay, yeah.
So last week you said something that I didn't quite understand.
What's that?
You said passingly that Buddhism is not a literary tradition and that
It's not a literary?
tradition, or that it's not
I did.
based on
Oh, literalist.
literal.
Not literary. Literalist. I think I don't remember that. passage. Yeah, Buddhism is like, if you go to Texas, the guy who said, "Oh, I ain't seen no climate change. It ain't in my Bible. There ain't no climate change," right? So that's somebody who reads the Bible, literalistically reads the Bible, right? It's the Word of God. And there were Hindu people or Vedist people in Buddha's time, not really Hindus then, who were reading who thought